Hey guys, welcome back to the Base Brief. This week we're talking about the latest Twitter files showing the FBI meddling, Stanford's new woke language guide release, and so much more. Let's jump in. We have a busy episode today. Okay, Brad, how's it going?
Good. How's the first few days with the puppy treating you?
I feel like a new mom. I get peed on all the time. I literally have not had a full night's sleep since I got him. He wakes me up in the middle of the night to go out, but he's so good. The one major issue I'm having with him, he's really smart. He's accelerated his training quite quickly, and he has a full-time trainer starting next Wednesday after Christmas. But for right now, he's fine unless I leave and I put him in the kennel. And when that happens, it's a literal shitstorm. Like a literal shitstorm. He has bowel movements, his anxiety. I bought this camera to watch him to see what he does while I'm gone. He just cries. I mean, shrieks the entire time.
Aww.
I feel so guilty. I don't know what to do. Like, he's holding me hostage in my
Just
house.
never leave
I have
your
to.
house. Sounds like a win-win to me.
I barely am. I did Kennedy. I went to yoga one night, and then I went and ran some errands, like essential errands I had to do. Like, I'm barely leaving, and yet it's not enough for him. So we're gonna get there. It's gonna come together, but it has been a lot of work. So he has to drive home with me for the holiday this Friday. We're gonna go back to South Carolina for a few days, and that will be an interesting car trip.
Weren't you just in North Carolina?
Yes, I did an awesome event this weekend with the North Carolina Young Republicans Federation. It was so much fun. It was in Raleigh, and it was me and Representative Kat Kamek, who we've covered on the show. We like her work a lot of the time, and so I got to meet her and her team, which was cool. I got to meet a ton of just really cool young Republicans doing work in North Carolina, which, I'm not a Republican, but sometimes I have a good amount of common interest with some, and I just felt like I've met a lot of kindred spirits there, and also just so many cool girls, which, I like guys in the movement too, but I love meeting cool, hardworking, entrepreneurial young women, and there was 6 of them that I met, and they're my new friends. We're gonna hang out, and yeah, I absolutely loved it. It was a great event, but I literally went in for 24 hours. I left my house at 9 a.m. I had a WAG sitter get here at 9 a.m. on the dot to keep Phoenix, and then I was back in my front door by 9 a.m. the next day. So
wow,
I'm a crazy person.
Terrible.
But I had so much guilt leaving him. I had a lot of separation anxiety. And by the way, I don't know if you've ever used WAG, Brad, but
no, I haven't.
Unpaid plug here, guys. I love the WAG app. If you ever need a dog walker or a dog sitter, they'll literally come stay in your house with your dog, which is so nice because then you don't disrupt their environment. So I'm just thankful for that. But anyways, when are you heading home for the holidays?
Friday, but maybe Thursday. I might have to move it because there's going to be a big snowstorm Friday. So we'll see. Hope I make it there in one piece. I've just been doing some last minute Christmas shopping. It's hard, man, to get gifts for people. It's hard.
I know. And I feel like, I don't know. I don't want people to tell me what they want because then it just kind of feels like, well, why don't you just buy yourself what you want? Keep your money.
The problem I have is that myself and, my boyfriend and whatever, we're at the point in life where we're not super materialistic people, so we don't want hugely expensive things. And anything we do want, we can pretty much buy for ourselves. So then with gifts, you're left looking for something sentimental or something customized, but it's not as simple as, oh, here's a list of items I want. Because frankly, whenever I want something, I just buy it for myself and have it delivered on Amazon within a day or two. And it's not like I want anything that's crazy expensive and I can't afford it, so...
I'm with you, and honestly, my whole family's kind of that way. We're all adults now. We have one baby, so we're all spoiling her, obviously, for the holiday. But as far as it goes, we don't do the white elephant thing. We all buy each other presents. And so I have a big family with a lot of siblings and my parents, and it's, so hard to figure out things that they want. But I've been getting kind of creative this holiday season. My dad and brother are the 2 hardest to shop for because I just think men in general want so much less. And, they just have so... I don't know. They're even women, for me, you can always buy me a candle or a blankie or a face cream. I'm going to love it. Men are so much harder because they don't like those little luxuries as much. But I got creative and went the sentimental route for my brother and dad. I'm having oil paintings done for each of them with Rory.
Spoiler alert.
Well, they don't listen to the show.
Okay.
So my mom listens to the show. I think my sister does. I think my youngest brother does. But the other brother, never. And my dad, I don't think he does. So he won't find out till they get them.
Okay, well, that's very cool. I've gotten paintings done in the past. People love those as presents.
Yeah, always good to go sentimental when you can't think of anything else. All right, well, I hope you have a very Merry Christmas. Guys, we're going to actually be coming out next week with an episode 2. We're not taking a break, so you won't have to miss us. We'll be with you through the end of the year. But we have a very jam-packed episode, and I love these episodes when there's too much news for us to cover. You know, some weeks you and I are like, what do we talk about? There's nothing going on. Not this week. There is a full roundup, so we got to move quickly. First up, we have to talk about the Twitter files.
Yeah,
And
we've neglected this story a little bit because some of them have been underwhelming. The Twitter files, for folks that haven't followed, it's Elon Musk has been releasing internal Twitter documents and data to 3 journalists, Barry Weiss and Matt Taibbi, chief among them, who have been publishing and explaining it on Twitter, kind of showing what Twitter was like before Elon took over behind the scenes. So some pretty interesting stuff, but not the bombshells we really expected until this past weekend. They've been releasing them on Friday evenings, which I don't know who's advising them, but that's the worst time to drop a news story. But so last Friday, Matt Taibbi dropped the latest edition of the Twitter files, and then on Saturday, another journalist dropped the second portion. And this one all has to do with the pretty alarming and creepy relationship, apparently, between the FBI and Twitter executives.
which, I mean, you know, we kind of sort of suspected this, I guess, which might be one reason it's not getting all of the attention that you would sort of expect for this, because it's a very major issue. I mean, it's a major story. It's a major deal, even though we kind of suspected it to have concrete proof of their involvement behind the scenes. It should be a bombshell. It should be the kind of thing where, like, Congress is actually holding hearings and investigations into this. Instead, they're still on this January 6th thing this week. And so it's kind of frustrating. But on the other hand, I feel like we've just become desensitized to this as Americans, where it's just like, yeah, we know they're spying on us. Yeah, we know they're doing this. You know, and it's sort of like the same response as when Edward Snowden dropped his huge bombshell. People sort of just like went, yeah, we kind of already knew that, and like kept it moving and weren't outraged like they should be. But this is a huge deal, and one reason I really wanted for us to have covered on the show, I mean, there's been a ton of coverage of it. Even though the mainstream media has kind of stayed away from it, there's been plenty of independent media on it. But I, in the past week, have had a lot of people who are not kooks, right? People who are like pretty nuanced. If they're on the left, like they're nuanced. They're people who I, give some credibility to, who have basically been asserting that this is a nothing burger, or that it didn't happen, that the FBI was not in fact doing what we're saying they're doing. And I'm confused by it, but I think it must be an echo chamber thing of some sort. So I want for us to address it concretely here on the show once and for all, because as much as I am desensitized as the next person to what the FBI does, it's important that we highlight it and point out just how egregious it actually is behind the scenes.
Yeah, so we've got this reporting from Matt Taibbi. He reports, the Twitter files are revealing more every day about how the government collects, analyzes, and flags your social media content. Twitter's contact with the FBI was constant and pervasive, as if it were a subsidiary. Between January 2020 and November 2022, there were over 150 emails between the FBI and former Twitter Trust and Safety Chief Yoel Roth. Some are mundane, like an agent wishing Roth a Happy New Year, along with a reminder to attend our quarterly call next week. Others are requests for information into Twitter users related to investigations, but a huge number are the FBI flagging specific posts and handles of users about election misinformation or joke tweets, even from low follower accounts with like 200 followers, or tweets that got like 5 likes. And they were regularly emailing them and saying, hey, we would like you to investigate this and take down or not take down it based on your policies. Very diplomatically worded, but flagging it and saying, hey, these posts should really take a look. And now we've actually got some of the emails released and everything, but it's a pretty big revelation. It's a pretty big revelation to see this going down behind the scenes, and now to have the curtain revealed.
Yeah, and I really don't understand the people who are trying to sidestep this. And I think what they're trying to say is like, well, the FBI didn't tell them they had to take it down. So,
and that might be an important distinction legally. When this becomes a First Amendment issue, that might matter whether it was coerced or a suggestion. But as far as it being sus, it doesn't really matter whether what their exact precise language. It's still a red flag.
No, I think it's utter horseshit to even suggest that. I have to be totally honest, because the FBI suggesting you do something as a private company when you also have the FTC looming over your head, congressmen threatening to pull you in before their committees and break up your companies if you don't act how they want you to, basically saying you're responsible for misinformation and election issues, and this is a threat to national security, and if you don't do what we say you need to do to clean up your content, then we're going to have you come in before Congress to be investigated. Like, no. The FBI suggesting you do something as a private company is BS. That is a threat. That is a implied threat, basically, that if you don't do what we want you to do, the full force of government could be used against you. And they have not been shy about this. Throughout various levels of DC, they have made it known that they intend to try to basically get big tech under their thumb. They've filed numerous bills. They've made open threats to the various leaders who run these companies. Like, I'm not here for it. I'm not here for this idea that the FBI or any agency within the government can merely suggest something and it be different than telling you to do it. Because there is an implied threat there that they will use the power of government against you if you do not do what they're suggesting, right? Well, they'll use regulations to harm you and help your competitors. It could go a million different ways. But this is actually the problem. I've talked about this extensively with people working around these sectors, is that in order to sidestep the Constitution, the government doesn't actually have to firmly do something that sidesteps the Constitution. They can kind of just have this implied threat that is never passed in the form of a law or a form of a lawsuit. They're just sort of having these conversations behind the scenes, but in doing that, they are violating free speech, they are violating the free market, and it makes it really hard to go after them because you never have them put it in writing because they're not stupid, right? They know that they pass a bill violating the First Amendment, then that's going to get struck down. But if they use these kinds of methods behind the scenes, it's a lot harder to hold them accountable and go after them for that.
Yeah, and that's why Matt Taibbi described the relationship of the FBI and the Twitter as a master and canine quality of their relationship. Like, go get 'em, boy. And he shared this one email where FBI San Francisco notifies Twitter that it potentially wants action taken against 4 random accounts. Jonathan 1 Wade at from MA at Malt_Thomas. Like, these are random people who just posted things. He shares another email from the FBI where they flagged going back and forth with the FBI, where they essentially follow up and say, here's what we've done on all the accounts that you said we should check out. We suspended these ones. We bounced the tweets of these ones, blah, 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 blah. And so they're essentially going back and forth doing the bidding of these people, including some very small accounts. So there's this one account at Lexitola that was on this list that is some sort of just joke crap posting account. And Matt Taibbi reached out to this guy who has 1,600 followers, which in the Twitterverse is nothing really. And he said, my thoughts initially include, it seems like a First Amendment violation, but holy cow, me, an account with the reach of an amoeba. What else are they looking at? Another user, Tiberius444, who has, again, about 1,600 followers, and isn't really anybody of note, said, I can't believe that, and this was one of the people flagged by the FBI to Twitter, and he said, I can't believe the FBI is policing jokes on Twitter. That's crazy. Well, I guess believe it, because that's what they're doing. That's how they're spending their time, is highlighting random posts with extremely low engagement and telling Twitter to go get them.
I'm just can we somehow search these documents for our names? Because if they're flagging little accounts for this kind of pushback on the FBI, God knows. I've gone after them much harder than this. I feel certain I'm somewhere on their list. This is crazy town. And it makes it's not only crazy town because it is such an overt violation of the Constitution of basic civil liberties, but it's also this is what the FBI is using your tax dollars and their time and resources to do. They're sitting there combing through Twitter instead of stopping child sex trafficking, instead of solving more than their 60% average homicide clearance rate, instead of testing rape kits, instead of doing absolutely anything to meaningfully reduce violence and actually solve and prevent violent crime. They are over here on Twitter trying to find little errors, trying to find anything that breaks the government's narrative, and working behind the scenes to have it taken down. That is what your government is doing with your taxes. When people say, taxes are the price you pay to live in a civilized society, what? Sir, what? No, taxes are the price you pay to have weirdos and government bureaucracy sit around and stalk you online while they stuff their faces with donuts. I just cannot. This is infuriating.
Do FBI agents like donuts too, like regular cops?
I don't know. I don't care.
I like donuts. So maybe that makes me a sympathizer. I love a good donut. So what's really interesting that Taibbi reports in this is that the entire push here was basically done using the 2016 Russia collusion narrative that turned out to be mostly a hoax. The idea that Trump colluded with Putin to steal the election that they pushed for years, on mainstream media, and they had all these investigations. And then, while Trump has a lot of shady stuff going on with Russia for sure, there was no actual there in terms of collusion. But nonetheless, during all the years when this was happening between Twitter and the FBI, Taibbi says that they used this as the justification for all these drastic measures, these unprecedented back and forth exchanges. It was all saying, well, we have to do this because the 2016 Russia hijacked our social media to make a difference in the election. And of course, that was never really true. I mean, they posted some memes and stuff that got a few hundred likes here or there, very minimal impact. But they use that as a pretext. And Taibbi says it's analogous to how 9/11 inspired the expansion of the security state. And I thought that was a really interesting insight.
It is, but unlike 9/11, Russiagate didn't happen, and yet they basically manufactured an entire crisis, got half the country to believe it because they're so tribalistic they don't know how to question anything, and then use that for a massive expansion of state power and are continuing to do that. And that's honestly the least surprising thing in the world. Russiagate was always a nothing burger. Even just looking into that really early on, it was pretty clear there didn't have anything to back that up. There was nothing really serious happening. And on top of that, it's kind of hilarious for anybody in American politics to whine about election interference, given what we do in other countries' elections. Posting some memes, having some bots on Twitter, hyping up Donald Trump is not election interference, guys. If you want to see real election interference, go watch what we do. And so it was always just such a ridiculous conspiracy theory on the left that still does not get denounced for being that as it is. And they still kind of try to say that election denial is only on the right. No, you guys were the OG election deniers, and you started this whole lie basically to excuse your god-awful Hillary Clinton campaign, and kept it going for, multiple years now. And so I'm not surprised all they're doing this, but it is infuriating. And this is why people should always be highly skeptical of these narratives and these stories coming out of people in the government, because they're always going to try to use any kind of crisis, any kind of scandal they can to get more power. That is their end goal, and it will always be their end goal.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting when how often the idea of a crisis is exploited by the government. But the other big revelation in this latest batch of the Twitter files, this one part reported by Michael Schellenberger, is that there's this weird revolving door between Twitter and the FBI, of all places. We're used to a revolving door between Congress and lobbyists. But here, as of 2020, Michael Schellenberger reports there were so many former FBI employees working at Twitter that they had created their own private Slack channel and a crib sheet to onboard new FBI arrivals. The FBI also had, quote unquote, an encrypted messaging network so employees from FBI and Twitter could communicate. And I'm guessing we're not going to get to see any of those messages. Meanwhile, the FBI paid Twitter millions of dollars, taxpayer dollars, to compensate for its time that it spent handling all their FBI requests and everything. All of this is extremely sus to me, this huge nexus between the FBI and Twitter.
I think that is completely scandalous, and it is interesting because you do see this revolving door from K Street, which is where all the lobbying firms are, and politicians and people in the bureaucracy and all that. But to go to Twitter, it just feels very sinister. It feels very kind of coordinated and planned, and it does make me really wonder what it looks like behind the scenes at all these other social media companies, particularly people like Facebook, who've been much more in the good graces of government because they've been more apt to play ball with them, I think. And so I think as a whole, if we see that this is what was going on at Twitter, we can assume it's going on across many other platforms and many other areas. And again, this is the kind of thing where I think actually government should get involved. I think our congressional leaders should be calling for investigations into this. I think there should be answers demanded. I think there should be protocols put in place that prevent this kind of collusion behind the scenes. And I think that when you see these kinds of things come out, you and I have always said tech can do it at once. These are private companies that can do what they want. And people have tried to argue back with us and say, well, if the government's basically controlling them, they're a de facto government agency. That's not true. That's not how basic law works. But what I will say is that, one, this lends power to those narratives that these companies are no longer private companies when you have this amount of government involvement behind the scenes. And secondarily, I think that it demands an answer for how we ensure government doesn't continue to co-opt private industry and use it at their behest. And there has to be stronger barriers in place that say even the suggestion of censoring people is a First Amendment violation. Even the suggestion of telling companies how to run themselves so they don't get regulated is a free market violation. This is not constitutional. If you do this, you will be held accountable. Like these are the kinds of, limits that we really need to see enacted if we're going to ever get control of our economy again, if we're going to really get back to any vein of like civil liberties being upheld again. And I'm discouraged that we don't really see anybody ranting and raving about this in DC.
Yeah.
And I think that's just because few people on the right are still real defenders of civil liberties too, right? Like, I don't think that people on the right have an issue with this if it was going that direction, unfortunately. A lot of them would be totally fine if this was being done to people on the left, and they're mad at big tech because it was going against them this time, and they're not going to step up and defend them because they see tech as the enemy instead of the true enemy, which is the government.
Yeah, and we're seeing some of that with Elon's inconsistent free speech decisions, shall we say, and people defending them. But it's interesting because it's obviously true that, like, it's not as if the government can never contact companies or never, like, obviously with illegal stuff, like criminal activity, they coordinate with these companies all the time, right? Like, oh, this violent threat was posted. And so we're trying to ask the company who this belongs to, or can you unlock this iPhone, or this is stuff that happens. But it's also obviously true that they simply can't use private parties to get around the Constitution's protection. So, for example, I heard some lawyers discussing this, and they used a pretty interesting example. The Fourth Amendment. The police can't just go search Hannah Cox for no reason. That would be unconstitutional. In the same way, if they told Brad Polumbo, hey, go search Hannah Cox and do it for us, well, that's still unconstitutional, even though I'm a private citizen. And so I don't know that we're at that threshold. I don't know. There will probably be court cases to see. But at some level of government coercion and collusion with these tech companies, it does blatantly become as if they're in this specific action, acting as state actors. And so that's a huge red flag for me. And I really would like to see that get reined in.
I totally agree, and I apologize for the distraction. Phoenix is trying to eat my curtain as we speak. I'm terrified he's going to pull it down. Okay. No, I think you're totally right, though, and what I wanted to actually say to that is one of Amy Klobuchar's bad antitrust kind of bills actually had that in it. I covered this at Base Politics. Actually had a component in there telling companies that they basically needed to start turning over records on people, violating the Fourth Amendment, getting around warrants, or they could be they could go after their Section 230 protections. And so it's not even just that they are kind of trying to do this already behind the scenes. They're actually trying to codify it. They're trying to pass bills that would make that not only legal, but like a command that companies had to basically violate warrants and the Fourth Amendment and hand over data information on people in order to keep Section 230. So like these are the kinds of things that are actively happening in DC, and it's the things that I think people should be up in arms about instead of focusing on a myriad of other issues that really are kind of nothing burgers, don't matter. So I hope our audience gets hype on this, because to me, these infringements of civil liberties, they're so significant, because if we don't start turning back away from them, we'll never regain ground. You know, you look at where we're at after 9/11, you look at where we're at after Assange and Snowden's revelations, and like nothing happened because people didn't get outraged. They didn't take to the streets to protest this. They didn't demand answers from their representatives. And so it's sort of like we had these huge revelations that government's doing these things to violate you, and then nothing ever occurred to make it stop, and it only continues to worsen. It's just this slope that will continue to like slide down unless something gives and people really start to see this as the huge threat that it is ultimately. All right, well, let's move on to the next topic. Speaking of things that people give their attention to that literally don't matter instead of the important things that do matter, Stanford University, which is an Ivy League university where allegedly some of the best and brightest Americans go to study, recently released a new woke language guide. And they said the goal of the Elimination of Harmful Language initiative is to eliminate many forms of harmful language, including racist, violent, and biased, i.e. disability bias, ethnic slurs, gender bias, implicit bias, sexual bias, language in Stanford websites and code. The purpose of this website is to educate people about the possible impact of the words we use. And then it has a content warning that says, this website contains language that is offensive or harmful. Please engage with this website at your own pace. So, Brad and I are going to engage with it at our own pace, which is going to be so fun because we've already glanced a little bit over it, and it is, guys, this is a blast. Buckle up, okay?
Yeah, so this is an internal Stanford document that was just published by the Wall Street Journal and kind of exposed this week. Essentially, like their bureaucrats internally wanted to make sure all their documents and code and language and rules weren't using offensive terms. And I have to say, it sounds like something that's going to be absurd. And then it's way worse than you expect. It's literally way worse than you expect. So maybe we'll just go back and forth and read out these lists because they have different categories. So first up, they have the words that are ableist and they are harmful to people with disabilities, such as the term lame, which is apparently ableist language that can trivialize the experience of people living with disabilities.
Well, and okay, so I have to point out the way that they've structured this makes it even funnier because what they have is they have the word that you should not use anymore. They have substitutes that they think are better, and then they have explanation for why you shouldn't use it. And so also under ableist, they have that you should not use the word blind study. Instead, you should say a mass study because blind study unintentionally perpetrates that disability is somehow abnormal or negative, furthering an ableist culture.
What does that even mean? Like, not being able to see is a negative thing. I don't think any blind person would claim otherwise. What?
No, it's like having a disability, like most people do not have a disability, so it is something that is different. Like, it's like they just want to erase reality with these things. I'm like, I don't get it. I know many people with disabilities, and they're not sitting around wanting people to pretend that they don't have a disability, right? It's sort of just like, this is a part of who I am. It doesn't make me any less of a person, but, like, it is something I deal with. Keep it moving.
Also, like, the idea of a blind study is just that they're saying blind as in you can't see it, not as in a blind person, right? Like a blindfold is what there is. Ay, Dios mío. So the next one is the term insane. They say instead you should say surprising or wild, which are not synonyms. They're not, because apparently insane is ableist language that trivializes the experience of people living with mental health conditions. No, it doesn't. This is so cringe. Also, isn't wild offensive to, like, indigenous and aborigine communities or you could play this game for literally any word?
Well, and I told you in discussing this is something I've actually experienced happen when I've worked around groups on the left, especially with my work around mental health and criminal justice. I've been in rooms where, like, we're looking over our talking points that we're going to be giving out to lawmakers. We're looking at, like, our one-pagers or our website language that we're using. And I will have people say to me, like, I remember distinctly one time I had in there, we were working on a bill that would exempt people with severe mental illness from the death penalty. And I had somebody going over my language in the room go, you haven't heard the term suffers from mental illness, and that's, like, offensive to people who have mental illness. You should just say a person with mental illness because suffering implies that it's, like, a negative condition. And I was like, it is a negative condition. I have a mental illness. It sucks. Like, I have to struggle with it every day. I do suffer because of my anxiety. Like, what are you talking about? And then what makes it even better is somebody else in the room will pipe up and be like, well, actually, you shouldn't say a person with mental illness because blah, blah. And it's like they just keep trying to outwoke each other. And it's like this circle jerk that just keeps going. You're like, oh my God. We're not going to say anything by the time we leave this room. It's phenomenal to witness. I'm sorry. It's like one of those fly on the wall moments I had working the left. And I loved a lot of the people I worked on the left. I want to be clear. They were well-meaning, but, like, it was hilarious to me to observe that. I was just like, okay, let's keep it moving and maybe save people's lives. Like, maybe, like, let's just keep it moving and not sit here and debate language all day. Okay, the last one under ableist that we've selected is you shouldn't say walk-in. Instead, you should say drop-in or open office because ableist language trivializes the experience of people living with disabilities.
Oh my God. So like they're saying some people can't walk, so you can't say walk-in.
Yeah.
This is just ridiculous.
It's, like, almost offensive. Like, I feel like it's actually more offensive on its face than the terms that they think are offensive. I'm like, you're sitting here basically, like, saying to people, like, oh, well, since you can't walk, nobody can use the word walk.
And they're saying, like, as if people with physical handicaps are so mentally and emotionally fragile that they're traumatized by a sign at a haircut place saying, we take walk-ins. Like, find me one handicapped person who, of course, handicap is also on their list of problematic words, who is actually bothered by this stuff that isn't a professional victimhood perpetuator, like somebody that works at one of these departments. Find me one real person that's offended by them. You can't.
No, because honestly, your life would have to be so perfect. You'd have to have so few real issues in order to be at a place where you literally care about these things and have time to think about it. Like, nobody with a disability could be in that camp because they're probably busy dealing with their disability. Like, this is just for, like, people with nothing better to do with their times. Okay, the next section is great. It's called cultural appropriation. And first on that list is you can't say bury the hatchet. Instead, you should say calls for peace or call for a truce, because using this term is culturally appropriation of a centuries-old tradition among some North American indigenous peoples who buried their tools of war as a symbol of peace. And so we can't say that because indigenous people did that as a sign of peace.
Only Elizabeth Warren is allowed to use this term.
It's like, okay, you can't even mention other terms used in other cultures. You can't even refer to great things they've done or symbols of peace that are beautiful symbols. Like, how dare you?
You're also not allowed to say spirit animal. The term refers to an animal spirit that guides or protects one on a journey. So to equate it with an animal one likes is to demean the significance of the term. Oh my gosh, these people are just inventing fake outrages to no end.
I would say they're on the warpath, but that's also banned. Instead, you should say mad or on the offensive, because that's a term that refers to the route taken by indigenous people heading toward a battle with an enemy. So that's a no-go as well.
But, like, so what? It's not denigrating indigenous people.
That's what's so funny about all this, though.
All terms have their origin in something from history, like, long time ago. Like, so?
It's basically saying, like, you can use any terms that comes from Europe or Asia, or, like, all these different cultures and histories where we pull language from, but if it's something to do with, like, the indigenous people or people who've been harmed at some point in our history, you just can't touch anything about them because they're just such little weak people. We have to protect everything.
That's like saying I can't use Roman numerals because I'm not Roman.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. It's exactly the same. It's offensive. This is what I mean. Like, I don't think any indigenous person is like, never use the terms of my people. Like, what? No. I mean, sometimes I almost get it. Like, when they were debating some of the things around, like, the sporting teams, you know, and, like, the mascots that some of the sporting teams use, like, the mascot the Braves had, or, like, what was the DC team, the Redskins. It's like, I kind of almost get it in those instances because they're using the terms of those people and, like, in a way that is not favorable, and, like, the mascots were kind of, like, caricatures and, like, we're kind of offensively drawn with, like, people having overtly red faces and things like that. Like, I kind of get it when we're talking about those kinds of topics where it's like you could see how it's demeaning or, like, negative towards these people. But these things are not that. They are literally just common phrases and terms that come from history and come from symbols within that community that are, like, good descriptors. And so in telling people they can't use it, what you're actually doing is telling them, like, you can't in any way access these communities, these people, these histories, which actually leads to racism. When people don't know and understand other cultures and have an appreciation for them, it leads to stereotyping and, like, and looking down on people and, like, not having an appreciation for their histories. I think this is so stupid. I can't stand it.
So the gender section is by far the craziest section. It says you can't say preferred pronouns. You have to say pronouns, because the word preferred suggests that non-binary identity is a choice and a preference. It is. It's not like a thing. Like, gender dysphoria is a medical condition. So transgender people don't choose to experience that. Gay people don't choose to be gay, but non-binary, and this they'll probably dig this up to get me canceled in 20 years or something, but I don't really care. Non-binary identity does seem like a choice because it's not actually an intrinsic characteristic. It's like you saying, I don't feel like this or that. I identify a different way. And I don't know. You can't keep up with all the pronoun stuff. They're also saying preferred pronouns makes it sound like you get a choice. You don't get a choice. You use my pronouns or else.
But it is a preferred pronoun because you're saying I identify, I choose, I pick this pronoun. I prefer you use this one versus the one that you would assume I'm born into. Like, I don't even get into all this, like, gender theory, honestly, like, because I don't care. Live your life, do what you want. I will do my best to be respectful. But, like, some of this just gets so nitpicky and it's so ridiculous. But anyways, I'm gonna keep it moving. The next thing you can't say is ballsy. Instead, you should say bold or risk taker, because this attributes personality traits to anatomy.
No. No. They're so literalist. With all of this, they're being so literal.
It does remind me of this Betty White quote. Guys, if you have kids listening, pause real fast because this is a dirty joke, but it's funny. Where she said, "Why do we say things are ballsy instead of saying they're vaginas? Vaginas can take a pounding, and balls are like really sensitive."
I'm picturing
so
Betty
funny.
White saying that, and I don't like it.
It's like a meme with her face that goes around. It's so funny. Okay,
So the next offensive term is freshman, because it lumps a group of students using masculine language into gender binary groups that don't include everyone. Give me a break. Oh my gosh, it just means first year. Same way, apparently, guys is offensive, and you should say folks, people, everyone.
I've been criticized because I say guys or hey you guys all the time. It's like a very Midwest like thing. I grew up in Louisville, like we say you guys. I've actually had people criticize me for this in my speaking and be like, you should use like non-gender things to refer to people, like say folks. And if you listen to people on the left, like Barack Obama, he's always like, hey folks. They're always like folks. And it's because they don't want to say guys or girls.
It's so weird. Guys
so
is
weird.
When you say like, hey guys, that's a gender neutral term already. Like,
I agree. Listen, ladies can be guys too. You know what I mean?
Oh,
you guys, like,
read the next
it's
one.
All encompassing. Uh-oh. Oh, you can't say ladies. You should say everyone.
You're lumping a group of people into gender binary language that doesn't include everyone, Hannah. That's problematic.
Brad, are you ready for the next one? You literally can't say he. Instead, you should just say the person's name or they, unless you know that you're addressing them as a he as their pronoun. It's better to just go ahead and assume that they is their preferred pronoun, which is batshit crazy.
Which is not true in 99.99% of cases. But yeah, we should assume that. What?
Just assume. What are you talking about? Like, no.
I found this one funny too. They say mailman is offensive, and you should say mail person, postal carrier, because it lumps a group of public servants using masculine language. It doesn't include everybody. No, it doesn't. Again, it's just a generic term, and there's not a single male person out there who's like, I hate it when I'm called a mailman. Like, no, that's literally their job title.
Also, when I saw this, I was like, I think I just naturally do. If I know my mailman is a woman, I would say male woman. I just kind of would. But, like, if I don't know, then I would just generically say the mailman. Like, who cares? Who cares? I just, again, as a woman, none of this does anything to advance me.
This doesn't keep you up at night?
Or changing this does not help progress me, does not give me a greater standing in society, does not make me feel more equal, more empowered. Like, no. Like, nobody asked for this at all. Let's see what else we got. You can't say landlord or landlady. You should just say property owner. Actually, I think what they want you to say is like murderous dictator, villain of the working class when it comes to landlords. Exploiter. And then you guys is last on that list. So can't say guys. Y'all should not say you guys, which I'm not going to stop. I say hey you guys literally at the beginning of every episode, and I'm going to keep doing it. All right.
So the next category is what they call imprecise language. For example, they say the term American is offensive, and instead you should say U.S. citizen, because the term American refers to people from the United States only, thereby insinuating that the U.S. is the most important country in the Americas, which is actually made up out of 42 countries. Because it is. Obviously and objectively, and never has anyone ever heard the term American and thought that they were referring to, that person is actually El Salvadorian. Like, what?
No. Okay, here's the best one, Liz. You cannot say Karen. It says that this term is used to ridicule or demean a certain group of people based on their behaviors.
What's wrong with that?
Yes,
I don't understand.
I do want to demean a certain group of people based on their behaviors. There's nothing wrong with demonizing people based on their behaviors. Like,
the term murderers really demonizes people based on their behaviors. Like, that's fine. We don't want to demonize people on the basis of things they can't control. But behaviors is totally fair game. I don't know. This is just dumb.
Especially negative behaviors. Like, yeah, we want to demean people who act in a negative way that has bad repercussions on other people's lives. I do mean to demean them. Like, what? What? Oh, God.
Of course, this is the thing, like, even the woke can't keep up with their own ever-evolving standards. People of color is now an offensive term. That was the woke term until literally 5 seconds ago. But now you're supposed to say BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and people of color.
Nobody in the course of normality has ever said BIPOC in
I
society.
only ever see it in like statements from
Yes.
leftist groups or whatever. It's not a real term anyone uses.
No, and in fact, the people I have seen commenting on this who are within people of color groups say that they hate even the term people of color or BIPOC or any of it because they're like, no, like I'm black, my experience is black, or I'm Hispanic, my experience is Hispanic. Like, stop trying to lump
It's
us all
so
together.
collectivist.
It's so collectivist. Just because like we're not white, you basically want to like push us into one like melting pot and say we're all the same and we've all had the same experiences, and
Kind
it's
of
just not
offensive.
true. It's very offensive. Yeah. You also can't say straight. Instead, you should say heterosexual because this term implies that anyone who is not heterosexual is bent or not normal.
What? What? Never have I ever, as a gay person, been offended by the term straight.
Implies you're bent.
Yes.
That's funny. Also, you can't say thug. Instead, you should say suspect or criminal because although the term refers to a violent person or criminal, it often takes on a racist connotation when used in certain circles. No, it doesn't. It literally just on its face means a criminal or someone who commits bad behavior. Like,
I feel like these people are telling on themselves. Like they have these racist associations, and so they're like that are really not common, and they're saying this is common, and it's like I don't think it is actually.
It's not. When I say thug, I literally just mean somebody who acts like a thug. Like, it's another way of grouping people based on their behaviors and actions. Yes. But if you're like attributing a race to that, you're saying that you think black people are more likely to commit bad behaviors. Not me. That's on you. Like, I don't think that. So, all right. Next, we have the racism section. This one's very interesting. First on the list is you can't say black sheep.
What?
You should instead say
Black sheep. Read the explanation. Read it. Read it.
It assigns negative connotation to the color black, racializing the term.
I can't even take this seriously. This is supposed to be one of America's elite higher education institutions.
Instead of black sheep, you should say outcast. I'm done. They're like, how dare you racialize a sheep?
You also can't say grandfather, like the term, to grandfather something in, because they say that you should say legacy because the term has its roots in the grandfather clause adopted by southern states to deny voting rights to blacks. I have a couple points here. One is, that might be true, I honestly don't know, but like, that might be its origin, but the way it's used today has nothing to do with race. So what's the problem? And then also, is it just me or is referring to people as blacks, which they do in this description, kind of like cringe, outdated language? Like I would never say, blacks love this, or like that's a very strange. I would say, African Americans. I would say black people. I would not just start referring to people as blacks. And it's funny that they're doing that in this woke language document.
It gives 1940s grandfather vibe, the blacks. No, like it's very, very weird that they're using that in this language. I also think when it comes to this, like this is major care and energy to go back and research the term grandfather to even know that refers to this clause that was used. And I assume even then it was called that because it had some other origins, right? Like the nitpickiness around this, that like nobody's sitting here thinking about these things or worried about them or even knows them to have this association until you go to great lengths to make a huge deal out of it and to try to like make it something you can't say. And it's just such ridiculous behavior. All right, up next, you cannot say uppity. I've actually been criticized for saying this before because I often say that I'm a bit uppity, and I am. I like nice things. I think I deserve nice things. Like, I don't like going to generic places, so like I can be a little bit pretentious in some ways, and I've said that before, and people are like, oh, you can't say uppity. And I'm like, why? And they're like, because it was used like negatively in a racial way, like to call black people who wanted to like have nicer things, like that they were uppity. I'm like, okay, but I'm not using it in that way. I'm calling myself uppity. So like, how's that in any way racist or racial? And like, this is what makes me mad is like some words can be used in conjunction with other words or in certain like settings to where what you're saying is actually racist or negative. But it doesn't mean that the word itself is racist or negative. It just is on its face. It means what it means. Words have meanings. Look them up. Use your basic dictionary and quit being a weirdo. Like
Exactly. So this next one is the term white paper is apparently offensive, and you should say position paper because it assigns value connotations based on color. White equals good. An act which is subconsciously racialized. This is not even correct because a white paper is a policy statement, but it's not like inherently good. Like, there are white papers on either side of an issue. It's not because it's white, it's good. They don't even know what they're talking about.
I think it's just called white paper because you write a bunch of words on white paper. But like, I honestly,
Yeah, it's literally that. That's why.
I want to film me and you going around our movement, like the nonprofit liberty movement, and just calling things a position paper and see like how long it takes people to like figure out what we're doing. Like, people would be so confused if I was like, my position paper, like on it. I would look crazy. All right, the next section is violence. They say that you can't say beating a dead horse because the expression normalizes violence against animals.
Yeah, every time I hear that, I'm tempted to go beat the crap out of a dead horse.
Yeah. Yes. I actually know several people who have had to go beat horses after hearing this phrase, and it normalized it for them.
Yeah, they also say that killing two birds with one stone is a problematic expression because it normalizes violence against animals.
Also, you can't say killing it or killed it as in doing a great job, because doing a good job should not be equated with death. The term could be triggering if someone close to the recipient actually was killed.
What? Oh my god.
No! As somebody who has had loved ones be killed, like, no! Like, that's just... This does not go through the head of normal, sane people, which I know we're not allowed to say sane anymore, but like, listen, this is not normal. This is abnormal behavior and thought patterns if these are the things that you think about when you hear these words.
And once again, the woke are eating their own because they say the term trigger warning is offensive. And instead, you should say content note, because the phrase can cause stress about what's to follow. Additionally, one can never know what may or may not trigger a particular person. This is ridiculous.
This is some coddling, pedantic stuff. Like, if, honest to God, if you need this amount of like hand-holding and shielding around words, like, please go see a therapist, because this is not normal. And I don't want you voting, and I don't want you around in society like inflicting this trauma on the rest of us. Like, seek help. This is not normal. You should be. That's really the other concerned.
Thing too. It's like they're not going to be prepared for the real world. The real world has all these words all the time in use. So why are you trying to coddle them and say like, oh, we can't use these words around our fragile students? Like, you're not exactly preparing them for the real world, are you?
I also just want us to be raising people and educating people to actually be people of consequence in the world, and to go out and fight real injustices, and to do something about the massive amounts of oppression and genocide and hunger and like injustice that we still deal with around the globe, because there's a lot of work to be done, a lot of real work to be done. And when you sit here and tell people it's okay to instead spend their time on this kind of ridiculous, just overtly childlike sort of issues, I just think it equates to a society where you have a bunch of people who are super privileged, who think they're victims, and who sit around wanting to be catered to instead of going out and helping other people. Like, get over yourselves, please, for the love of God. I can't. Ugh.
All right, now for our very online segment where we round up the things from the internet we saw this week blowing up that either triggered or delighted us. And in this case, I have to say it's a triggering for me, because the pride flag keeps evolving. I keep seeing these people putting out new, even woker versions. And the latest one comes from this like activist organization and this trans activist designer. And it is a rainbow flag with the triangle added for the trans colors, black and brown, because apparently like race is part of this now, and the intersex flag. For folks that don't know, intersex is like a rare medical condition where people have like both genetic markers, I believe. I don't exactly know, but and then this is the part that really triggered me personally, or I should say really content noted me. They put a red umbrella in the middle, which is the symbol for sex work and the sex workers' rights movement. And, no, that's not part of LGBT. That's not the same thing. No.
I want to note here, you literally can barely see the original rainbow pride flag underneath all this other. It's almost all gone. Like, you are being replaced as we speak. Like, they don't care about you anymore. They have bigger fish to fry. Like, this is bonkers to me. Like, you and I have talked about this on the show. I already kind of think it's weird that they lump trans issues in with LGBT issues. Like, I feel like those are two separate things. this is running so far past that where you're like, sex workers? Like, look, I'm for legalizing sex work. I have been for a while. I don't know why there needs to be a pride flag for it. I think it's still an unfortunate profession that many vulnerable people find themselves in, and I would not hope for anybody to feel like they have to work in that field. I don't think they should be criminalized for it or put in jail for it, and that has much worse repercussions. But like, it's not something to be celebrated with a flag, right? Like, it's still a sad sort of environment for those who have to work in that. And I don't mean any disrespect there, but like, there's people in our movement that want to run around being like, rah rah sex work, and it's like, no, you're missing the plot. No, people should not be in jail for sex work. They shouldn't be targeted because of it. They shouldn't be demeaned because of their sex work. But like, I would hope that churches and charities do a lot to try to pull people out of sex work and to erase the need for sex work. And I have no intention of celebrating it or pretending like it's a great thing. It's not.
It's also a choice. That's a thing. At least in this context, when we're talking about, we're not talking about human trafficking or anything terrible like that. But like in the voluntary sex work industry, that's a choice of profession that people are making, and you're conflating it with like inanimate characteristics like being gay or having gender dysphoria that people don't choose. And the whole part of the whole argument around the dignity and the equality case for LGBT people is that they're born this way, right? They can't choose it. And then when you're conflating it with things people choose, that, I also don't support the criminalization of sex work at all. But I don't view it as a choice I would want any loved one of mine to make, or something that is amazing or yes, queen at all. And I just certainly don't want it conflated with the pride flag. And it's just beyond parody at this point, the ever-evolving nature of this thing. It's like if you fly the normal rainbow flag online, in the real world it's still very common, but online that's now like, an alt-right hate symbol in certain corners of Reddit or woke Twitter. Inclusive. You're declaring yourself a TERF or something. I don't know. But anyway, we'll move on to what's next. But please stop. Also, just on the design points, this is hideous. It's hideous.
It's a catastrophe.
Sorry, one more thing. Somebody posted a fixed version with just scissors, and they cut out all the bull crap and just the rainbow is left. And they were getting attacked in the comments saying, you're racist, you're transphobic, you're everything. And he replied, he's like, no, the rainbow includes everybody. That's the point of the original rainbow. They don't need a separate black and brown because they're already included. Like,
right.
And I agree with that completely.
Oh, gosh. It's weird. It's again like the woke eating itself. Like, LGBTQ is no longer good enough for them, and if you're not like moving full ahead, I noticed they call this the progress flag now. They're not even calling it the pride flag anymore. It's progress flag.
Well, it's a hard pass for me.
Pretty soon they're gonna have like the Mark sign incorporated in there. If you don't incorporate that, then you're a bigot. Like, that's where it's ultimately going. So we see you. Okay, let's move along. We saw this hilarious tweet today. Someone named Kim Taylor, who is in sales, tweeted this email that she received. It says, Kim, next week I'll be flying out to Colorado to propose to my long-term girlfriend. She has no idea it's coming, and she'll probably fall over with excitement. I bet she won't. Her greatest wish is about to come true, and it's going to be a magical holiday season when she says yes. To make her holiday even more magical, I'd love for you to grant my wish and say yes to meeting with me. Our blanked out company.
This is the cringiest opening.
Like, I don't know how to break this to this person, but she is not saying yes. Like, I have a strong feeling whoever he's proposing to has no idea they're in a relationship with him at all. Like, at all. That's the vibe I get from this. A magical holiday. Like, oh God. But he says that their company is likely a totally different, and it's blanked out, than you knew in the past. And I would like to finally have the chance to discuss how we can not only help your company grow, but help you avoid the pitfalls of a looming recession.
So this is like a business pitch.
Yeah. She says a strong contender for worst sales email of the year. Like, I'm sorry, I find this triggering. Like, this is like the nice guy energy that like won't leave you alone, but like believes that he's your Prince Charming and he keeps pursuing you, and you're like, oh my God, like no man should use these kinds of words. Fall over with excitement. Like,
this guy is definitely a LinkedIn influencer. There's so much cringe in like the business online world. There's so much cringe, and I'm sure you do too, but as a journalist I get all these PR spam pitches.
Yeah.
I've never had one quite as bad as this, but some of them are very cheesy.
It's true. The DMs on LinkedIn are exceptionally weird. Okay, I want to go on to this video I found. This is going to surprise you, Brad. I don't think you've watched this yet, but I want to praise Michelle Obama for a very classy and based response on Meghan Markle. So I can't stand Meghan Markle. I think she's a ladder climber. I think she is just not a good person. I think she'll sell out anybody that gets in her way, including her own family members. I'm not here for her at all. And I think I think Harry's just very weak, and she's manipulated him and played him like a fiddle. And as a whole, I can't stand the two of them. I can't stand their whining and how they continue to, they just want privacy, and yet they're like working
making a Netflix documentary.
Yeah. It's like, go away, actually. Please go away. Nobody wants to hear from you guys, I promise. So Michelle Obama gets asked about Meghan Markle in an interview, and I want to roll this clip and let you listen to how she responds, because she smacks her down in the most classy way and like the most like subliminal way. I mean, this is just, she should have kept being an attorney, because you can tell from this answer, like, she's good. Like, she's really good. So let's play it.
You watched Meghan Markle speak out the other night. What went through your mind?
Public service, it's a bright, sharp, hot spotlight. And most people don't understand it, and nor should they. The thing that I always keep in mind is that none of this is about us in public service. It's about the people that we serve. I always try to push the light back out and focus it on the folks that we're actually here to serve.
But what about when she talked about the fact that she experienced racism? I mean, I feel like that was heartbreaking to hear that she felt, her own family thought differently of her.
As I said before, race isn't a new construct in this world for people of color, so it wasn't a complete surprise to sort of hear her feelings and to have them articulated. I think the thing that I hope for and the thing I think about is that this first and foremost is a family, and I pray for forgiveness and healing for them so that they can use this as a teachable moment for us all.
So did she just basically call Meghan Markle an attention whore?
She did. Like, not only that, but she basically said, like, when you're in the public limelight, when you choose to go into, like, service, like, you should put yourself second, and, like, basically was just kind of denouncing her whole, like, tirade she's been making about how persecuted she is and what a victim she is and how mistreated she is. Michelle Obama's like, yeah, being in the limelight is hard. And, I mean, she knows this better than anybody. Michelle Obama was treated terribly when she was in the White House. I mean, you literally had people calling her an ape in heels, like, disgusting, racist, horrible insults thrown her way. And, like, there were a lot of people who had issues with Michelle Obama. She said some things I didn't like, at times as well. But as a whole, like, I thought she carried herself with a lot of grace given the kind of scrutiny she was under. And often it really was. Contrary to Meghan Markle, it actually was very racially tinged. I don't think much of the criticism against Meghan has actually been racism. I think people just don't like her because she doesn't seem to be a very good person. Whereas Michelle Obama actually did deal with that and still wasn't out here in the streets whining about it. And I love when, like, they ask her specifically about race. They're, like, trying to tear up. Like, didn't you feel so bad for Meghan, like, experiencing racism? And Michelle's kind of like, racism's a thing. We've all dealt with it. Like, you chose to put yourself in the public spotlight, girl. Like, you chose to marry in this family. You wanted the limelight. You wanted the attention. You wanted the wealth. And now you want to sit here and whine about it. And I just love that Michelle did not seem to be there for it at all, and yet was still so classy in how she, like, sidestepped that, because you could tell the interviewer thought she was going to, like, totally be Team Meghan. And she wasn't, but the way she pivoted was just excellent. And then I loved at the end where she pointed out, like, this is a family. Like, this is not okay. Like, I hope they find healing. I hope they, find restoration behind the scenes, because ultimately, like, while this is public fodder, like, behind the scenes, these are real people and a real family relationship. And, like, that's terrible. This is happening. I don't know. I thought this was just an amazing Michelle Obama moment. I was all the way here for it.
Yeah. All right. So up next, we've got the White House press secretary, who recently said that January 6th is the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War, a noted exclusion that leaves out 9/11 and Pearl Harbor. Take a listen to what Karine Jean-Pierre had to say.
So I'll first say, and you've heard me say this many times, and the president as well, we've been very clear from the beginning that what we saw on January 6th was the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War. And the president has been very clear. Our democracy continues and remains under threat, and we all have a part to protect it. The committee has been doing important bipartisan work to get to the truth of what happened on that very day, so we can make sure that that doesn't happen again. So I'll leave it there.
I don't know what it is about January 6th that makes both sides start acting like complete like dummies, like idiots. It just brings out the idiocy in all sides, because I think we all pretty much agree it was a pathetic and shameful riot. But the idea that it's the worst attack on our democracy over 9/11, where thousands of Americans were killed by terrorists who hate our country and everything we stand for. Just no.
Yep. But just like Russiagate, they are going to make this a crisis and a controversy that they can use for years to come so that they can try to expand their power. They're already doing it. They're already trying to say, like, our elections are in danger. The threats to democracy are so severe. We need all of these, expansions of power. It's the same thing that they're trying to do with this incident as they've done with many others in the past. And I think it's very openly obvious at this point that that is their agenda, because January 6th was ultimately a nothing burger. Like, did you have a sitting president arguably try to overthrow the election? Yes. But was he thwarted at every turn? Also, yes. Like, there was never any real chance that he had of doing that, from the vice president standing against him, to various secretaries of state standing against him, to Congress standing against him. And the people that rioted at the January 6th Capitol, like, most of them were walking around taking selfies. I'm sorry. It was not this, like, huge attack. It was a bunch of boomers who got riled up by a president and went and took a little tour of the Capitol. And I'm not here for it being this, like, violent and dark day in our history. It was embarrassing. They looked crazy. Like, I don't think that that's how we should ever behave in a democracy. But, like, as a whole, there are so many worse incidents that I think actually threaten our basic civil liberties in this country every day that January 6th pales in comparison. And I'm so tired of hearing about it. And I just think
definitely worse than 9/11 and Pearl Harbor. Yeah. Totally normal, insane take.
Okay, up next, I found somebody on the internet who is arguably even a bigger woman hater and meaner than Pearl, who we covered a few weeks ago, who was a YouTube anti-feminist trad kind of pick-me girl. This girl is kind of in the same vein, but she's riled up. I want you to listen to this clip.
All the girls that are being 20 right now and absolute whores in the club, whatever not, in 10 years are going to be 30, trying to settle down and realize that all the good guys are taken. They're going to complain that they were ran through their whole life, but while they were partying for the past 10 years, all the good girls got cuffed by the good guys. And so now when they look at all the men that are options, they're going to be competing with the now 20-year-old good girls and be stuck. Why? Because all the good guys are gone. You missed your chance being a
Oh, wow. That was a lot.
It was a lot. She's riled up. Like, why are these girls so angry? This is what I don't get. The person who sent it to me, I was talking to them, and I was like, what I don't understand is, why are they so angry? Like, if that's what you truly believe. And I grew up with a lot of people who, wanted to get married young and who were, like, in the church, often, like, didn't believe in sex before marriage, and they did, and they got married in their early 20s, and that's fine, but, like, they're not out here yelling at people who made different choices for them, because they're actually happy, it seems, in their relationships and with their choices. Like, to me, this just screams that you are deeply insecure, deeply unhappy with your choices, and who I never see making these videos are, like, you never see 30-year-old women who waited till they got to get married till later in life, who built their careers, who don't have a divorce they have to now contend with, or, like, baby daddies they have to live with. You never see them out here in these videos, like, screaming at the women who choose to settle down early, or, like, are upset or mad about their choices. So I just don't get this energy. It's, like, very... Yeah. And I say it's pick me because I think the only thing that makes sense to me is, like, these girls desperately want to be with, like, quote, quote, masculine guys. And I think the masculine guys are picking the, like, people they call whores in their 20s, and they're mad about it. Other than that, like, I can't really figure out where
it's also, like, look at
from.
the comments just flooded with men saying, yes, finally a female gets it, blah, 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 the positive male affirmation. And I don't like this video because I sort of agree with part of the message in that I think, like, I would encourage young women or men to, like, date seriously and not to just... be super promiscuous. I don't think for most people that will make them happy. They don't necessarily have to settle down right away, but they should, like, respect their bodies and not treat themselves like a disposable object. I agree with this, but it's all done in it's all said in such a, like, condemning way of, like, people who don't do what I think are trash, blah, 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 rather than just, like, I think you'll be happier if you do this, which is how I look at it. Like, I also don't think it's just not as simple as by 30 all the good guys are gone. Like, no, there's life is complicated, and not every good guy is married and taken by 30. That's just not the case.
No, and a lot of them that do want to marry women when they're young want to do so because they want to control them, and they want people who are easy to manipulate, and they want, I mean, there's other nefarious reasons people get married really young. Like, I think people should do whatever works best for them, and I think they should respect their own boundaries and their choices and their goals, and that's fine, and then try to find other people who have the same goals. Like, what I don't with the trad community is it's like, okay, if that's who you want, if that's what you want to be, you want to live your life that way, like, just marry each other and leave everybody else alone. Like, I promise you, like, people in my camp are not looking for trad men, and people in, like, the, more progressive male camp are not looking for these trad women who, like, want to just sit at home and work, or sit at home and do housework. They want women who have careers. Like, people want different things, and that's okay. But it doesn't seem to be okay within the trad community, where they are literally hot and bothered under the collar at anybody not falling in line with their lifestyle choices, which it doesn't even seem that they're often making. That's the most ironic part about all of this, is like, there are these loud people on the internet who definitely want clicks. Like, it's definitely a pick-me kind of energy, but they don't even usually seem to have been married young or be doing the things that they claim to be doing.
I'm just saying, she's got some like, that is not trad energy in the outfit. If for folks on the podcast can't see, but in the outfit, that's not trad energy.
No, she looks like she's going to the club. Like, I'm very confused by it. I think it's a weird, like, very unhappy sort of aggression. But while we increasingly are seeing women on the internet behaving in this way, I'm also seeing their male counterparts running around, and they're equally cringe. I have to read you this tweet that I saw this week online. That apparently it says basically loving your kids is for losers. This is from a guy named Eric on Twitter, who says that he's a men's health and wellness person. He says, men, don't be emotionally attached to your children. A teacher doesn't attach to his students. A leader doesn't attach to his followers. A man who's emotionally attached to his children will be manipulated by his wife. # Masculinity Sunday.
Excuse me? I mean, my take on this is, I want to know who the 7,500 people are who like this, so women know to never marry these guys because they're going to be terrible fathers.
Like, what if you love your kids, your wife will manipulate you? What is wrong with you people? Like, this is like what I'm saying in this, like, weird hyper masculine, and it's not even like they think they're hyper masculine, right? And anybody who's online calling themselves an alpha or saying they're hyper masculine is like 1,010% not an alpha male or hyper masculine. But it's in these communities that, like, and they're saying this to each other, and like, it's like the other incels are like riling them up, and they're like, yeah, and then they just keep going, and it becomes normalized. Like, they think this is actually somehow admirable or like good life advice, and I'm just really sad for anybody who actually
think
grew up
that women are just all evil, and if they give them an opening, will like manipulate and control and abuse them? Like,
yeah, they hate women.
Obviously, some wives manipulate, but that happens with all people, and it's like, maybe just make sure you choose somebody for your partner who you can trust, and then you can actually. I'm really not here for this whole thing where like masculinity means men don't feel emotions. It's very unhealthy, and in fact suppressed emotions leads to a lot of mental health issues and problems. So I really don't think it's in their best interests, and especially doesn't make for good parenting advice.
Absolutely not. I'm really actually very deeply sad for anybody who grows up with either of these kinds of people as parents. Like, you obviously hate women, and I think the girl also hates women. Like, address that, figure that out, because it's not normal. It's a weird way to live your life. It's a weird mentality, and like, something is definitely going on beneath the surface there. So, all right, on to the next very online thing I saw. This was a tweet. It has a picture of what I believe is the movie Avatar. I've never seen Avatar.
Yes, it is. It's Avatar 2, the new one.
Oh, okay, it's the new one. And it's by a woman named Kathy Woods. And she says, at some point, we got to talk about the cultural appropriation of Avatar and white actors are cosplaying as people of color. It's just a mess and so not necessary, and no amount of visual effects, CGI, is going to erase that. Bad lace fronts, dry synthetic braids, Jesus, fix it. I feel like this might be the most racist thing I've seen online all week. Like, you're literally saying that avatars, who are blue aliens, are people of color and should only be played, therefore, by people of color. Even
only
though this is
blue people should play blue characters. That's the energy here.
Also, like, everything about this. I'm like, this, if I was a person of color, I would be extremely offended if you were telling me that like me and avatars are the same.
Yeah, I mean, you're literally saying these aliens who are like kind of like indigenous and in tribal and everything in this movie, you see them and you think black people. Like, you might be the racist, ma'am.
Yeah, no, I think this is high-key racist. All right, let's move on to the mailbag. What do we have up first?
So, first, somebody said, Fauci really is a media whore, which is what I called him last time. And I have to say, I think it's just the truth. I think it is. Whether you love him or hate him, I've never seen anybody who loves a camera more than Dr. Fauci.
It's true. No excuse for it. All right, another person says, while I respectfully disagree, ranch is a superior condiment. I think that's about your hot take.
Bad take. Blocked. Adam blocked. Okay, so now for our coverage of the Respect for Marriage Act and the gay marriage debate and Congresswoman Kat Cammack, HB says, thank you for featuring a Republican who supported the bill. This gives me hope. Yeah, there were more than 40 of them in the House. Also, thank you for naming groups who were fear-mongering. I'm an independent voter who leads Republican. I support gay marriage. Great, thank you. And thankfully, the majority do now, so...
Yeah, and I did have a conversation with a person in Congress who voted yes on this bill, and they were telling me like how bad it was behind the scenes with like the threats coming from the party leadership and how scared a lot of people were to vote for it, how many people wanted to vote for it and were like scared out of doing so because of the pressure of these other groups and leadership. So just know like on its face there were a lot more people even besides those 40 who wanted to vote for it and who were just ultimately cowards. Thin White Axe says Florida woman making us proud, and that's in reference to Kat Cammack's support for the bill.
Yeah. And so Brandon pointed out, and this is true, unfortunately some of the Republican U.S. senators who supported the Respect for Marriage Act are retiring and being replaced with anti-gay senators. Yeah, that is true, unfortunately, but I do think I'm still positive about the general direction of the GOP and the right on these issues in terms of the voter base, and ultimately the politicians will catch up with the voters. It might just take some time.
Mm-hmm. Thor Willie said, don't judge Christian rap when you don't know what you're talking about. Try listening to Lecrae. This is in reference to a video we commented on last week where a girl said she was listening to Christian rap to get hype in the gym. And sir, I have listened to Lecrae. I actually worked at Light Records for 5 years, which is a black gospel Christian label. I'm well acquainted with all forms of Christian music.
This might have been at me, though, and I will admit ignorance, so I'm not judging it negatively. I do find it kind of a humorous concept, but I'm not saying it's bad because I have not listened to it. So he has a point. It's about me.
I'm not saying it's bad. Lecrae is a great artist, but like, it's not the same. I'm not listening to Lecrae to get hype in the gym. I'm sorry, no. All right, let's move on to our hot takes. Mine is not going to be that surprising to anybody, but I just want to say I think dogs make the best Christmas presents. If you're thinking about getting somebody a dog this Christmas, you should do it, because I was on the fence about giving myself a dog for Christmas, and I'm so glad I did. He is my whole life already. I'm obsessed with him. I love him so much, even though he's peeing on me all the time. Like, it is, get a dog. Absolutely get the dog.
That's hilarious. But make sure that dogs, if you get someone a dog, that you know for sure they want a dog.
Don't ever just buy somebody a dog and a car, like the two things that you see in holiday commercials where it's like, you really shouldn't just buy that for somebody unless you know they're on board.
Yes. Yeah, like I've always thought the idea of buying a car, like a husband getting his wife a car or something, like I'd be mad if my partner made that big a financial decision without me. Like,
yeah.
So my hot take is that New Year's resolutions are dumb. I may have said this before, but I think there's a reason almost everyone fails, because if you have to rely on some quirk of the calendar to motivate yourself to do something, you don't actually have the internal motivation it's going to take to stick to that goal, period.
I think that's mostly true. I think you should start changing immediately. As soon as you realize you need to change something, start working on it. All right, guys, that's a wrap. We hope you have a Merry Christmas, a Happy Hanukkah, a Happy Holiday season, whatever you're celebrating. We're celebrating with you. We love that you tune in every week. We'll see you next week. Until then, stay based.